Live from New York. It's a show that didn't necessarily see this coming, but I had some thoughts.
What do you mean, didn't see it coming?
Once Rodgers pushed Saleh,
You think?
I said, you know what? I'm going to file that away. Brew, classic 3 for you.
Yeah, classic 3 for
You
you.
went to the mattresses saying it wasn't a big deal, and you found another photo.
They were high-fiving and low-fiving.
I posted a help wanted ad last week. You said it was poor form. Mangini's the big winner of the internet today.
He called it.
We start with a new coach for the Jets. Robert Saleh fired after a 2-3 start and a recent loss in London that saw Aaron Rodgers throw 3 interceptions that were actually Robert Saleh's fault. We reviewed it. He got in there, was tipping the ball. Saleh goes 20 for 36 in his 3.5 somewhat year tenure. DC Jeff Ulbrich will be the interim head coach. Saleh reportedly blindsided by the firing. Nick, were you?
Little surprised by the timing of it, even though I should have just listened to Coach. Coach Mangini was like, you embarrassed Woody Johnson in front of his fancy British friends. You're out of there.
That's exactly what he
nailed
said.
it. And so I'm in a bit of a weird spot because I'm pretty well documented that I don't think Robert Saleh is a good head coach. And the evidence I have is his 56-game tenure.
Sure.
And so 20 and 36, that is a bottom 10 winning percentage of any coach of the last quarter century who got at least 50 games. Yeah, and so I don't think he was a very good head coach. I also think firing him and keeping Nat Hackett is an indefensible decision.
Thank you.
And so I think you can, smart people have argued, and they might be right, that if you bring him back to start the year and don't fire him when Mike Vrabel's available, when maybe you could get Belichick, when you could go with one of those young offensive minds, that you've got to give him more than 5 games.
Yeah.
I understand that logic. I don't know if that's 100% certain. What I do know is if you're going to bring the whole staff back and then 5 games in say it's a disaster that we have to find a way to salvage, keeping the coach who is, in my opinion, most responsible for the part of your team that's a disaster, which is the offense, is indefensible, unless, of course, simply because one guy Aaron Rodgers actually likes, and the other guy Aaron Rodgers just pretends to like. And so, and I didn't know you were going to do it off top of the show, but Brew, and this isn't about, us arguing about it, I do think it was over this moment. I think the moment that moment when they took a 2-score lead on the Patriots was the most jubilant moment Robert Saleh has had in at least 2 years and maybe his whole head coaching career.
Also the best Rodgers has played in 18 months.
Correct. And it should have just been a true moment of joy for a guy in Saleh who, again, even if I thought he was in over his head, has dealt with a lot of crap, and Rodgers couldn't even let him have that. Yeah. And so if you're going to fire people, and you want to fire the head coach, fine. But leaving Nat Hackett in there because Rodgers likes playing darts and bags with him is an outrage.
So quickly before I go to you, Brew, Rich Cimini, it wasn't really a report from Rich Cimini, but he was listening to the press conference. He wrote, I
saw this too.
Yeah, I don't think it's fait accompli that Hackett will remain in his current role as OC. So he wasn't fired, obviously, but maybe Ulbrich will make some changes.
Obviously, if one coach was going to be fired, it should have been Hackett. What is he doing? What is Hackett doing? Other than looking terrible with his boy Aaron Rodgers, I'm not going to bat for a guy that won 36% of his games. But one word comes to mind: scapegoat.
Oh.
Scapegoat. All right, because, again, he's not Vince Lombardi. We all know that. But he's a defensive coach, right? That's what he's great at.
Yep.
And their defense has been great. They're top 5 in just about everything. Sacks, points allowed, yards allowed. The problem is the offense. And look, we'll get into later how much Aaron Rodgers had to do with this. One thing that's undeniable is that had Rodgers played fairly well the last 2 weeks, they'd be 4-1 at the very least, 3-2.
Yeah.
And Robert Saleh would still be the head coach.
100%.
So I think he's scapegoated. I think Woody Johnson, Coach was right on the money with him being embarrassed up in London. He wants to do something. But I also think he's looking at it like to the fans. The fans see this season slipping away. I see this season. He said this is the best team in 25 years. I see it slipping away, he's saying, Let me do something to appease the fans. The fans want something. They want something done, and this gives the impression that, okay, change is about to happen. I don't think it works necessarily.
I agree.
But now let me read this one quote, too, from Woody that stuck out to me. Because you've heard about Saleh maybe too buddy-buddy with the players, right? This quote from Woody Johnson, Jeff Ulbrich is a tough coach who has the respect of the coaches and players on the team. So maybe Saleh wasn't. We heard Quincy Williams after the game say against Minnesota, we need accountability. You know, you can't just be saying the same thing. So maybe Saleh wasn't tough enough in that locker room. And that's usually how it happens. You got a players coach, you bring in a tough coach. You got a tough coach, you bring in a players coach. So maybe that's what Ulbrich is, and he'll clean things up and really dot their I's and cross the T's with the locker room, and you'll see a change.
I think that is sound analysis. The odd part of it is the one tough thing that we saw Saleh do
is why he's gone.
Is say, you know what? It's an unexcused absence, this trip to Egypt, that I'm going to tell you what it is. It was and he's still going to be fined. And I think the push was obviously like a symptom of that, but I think the root cause may have been there or further back when they were trying to get rid of Saleh. Excuse me, when they tried to get rid of Hackett.
Quickly, though, if Rodgers doesn't like Saleh or doesn't, whatever, he should have got rid of him before.
I think he
could have done it.
Right, but you could, if they were going to get rid of him, it had to be right after the season. This is why I agree with Wild's diagnosis. I think he was cool with Saleh until the unexcused absence. You can't, but nobody fires their coach in July. Right. You know what I mean? So like I think to me, that was the moment the relationship turned. And again, I don't think Robert Saleh is a good head coach, and he got more time than a lot of guys would have. But this is just an outrageous chain of events, and I agree with what you're saying, Brew, in general about players coach to tough nose coach, whatever it is. That doesn't, in my opinion, really apply to interims, because interim coach is who's in the building. And it's usually one of the two coordinators. And so they had the opportunity of Nat Hackett, who I said I thought could happen at some point.
Yeah.
But he had failed.
You think they would go if they a day ago?
Yes.
If you thought
because I thought that they, in my opinion, the Jets are still trying to keep up the charade that Aaron Rodgers isn't in charge of quite literally everything. And so I thought that if they fired Saleh, they would be like, all right, listen, everybody obviously knows this guy runs the thing, so let's make his buddy the head coach and see what happens. Sure. And, I mean, because right now, who is in charge? Because it's not Jeff Ulbrich, with respect to him. He might end up being...
People do think he's going to be a good head coach. But obviously,
Aaron Rodgers is in charge of everything.
Or Hackett would be gone.
Yeah.
Period.
Or Woody Johnson.
He would be gone.
Yeah. So here's the other thing that Woody Johnson, he had this press conference shortly before we came on the air. He said, this was my decision and mine alone. He tried to basically pour cold water on the idea that Rodgers was involved. I'll take him at his word.
I won't.
As challenging as that is for me, but I'm just trying to be a nice guy. Here's the thing, and I had Josh look this up. Someone in Woody Johnson's small circle should be like, hey, this actually has no history of working, of trying to turn the ship this early in the season. So 27 head coaches have been fired in the Super Bowl era before the sixth game of the season. Only one of them made the playoffs.
And that one, if I'm not mistaken, he took over for Gruden?
Yes.
So Gruden wasn't fired for the team being bad.
That's right.
He was fired because there was for terrible emails and stuff he did. So that's almost a different scenario entirely.
So, could argue that
it's really like 0 for 26.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the idea that, like, you know what, new coach coming in, it's not David Blatt, Ty Lue. There's no history of this working and turning something around. But it's not going to work.
The other thing Woody said was, I talked to Aaron last night.
Oh, yeah, this is the whole.
And this didn't come up.
No.
And Wild's tweet was right, which is, okay, well, if you're telling the truth, that's ridiculous, and if you're lying, that's ridiculous. Like the
over two.
I mean, either the idea that you talked to Aaron Monday night and didn't know yet or decided I'm keeping it from him, neither of those make sense. But if you're telling the truth, that means either you were like, I don't want to know how Aaron feels about this. That's not great.
Yep.
Or it's Monday night, you didn't think you were firing him. And then Tuesday, you were. None of it's good.
None of it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why the Jets are the Jets.
That's exactly right. That is why the Jets are the Jets.
Meanwhile, the reigning champs
Are the opposite.
still reigning. 5-0. Mahomes goes for over 330 yards, 130 to Juju. And Kareem Hunt goes for over 100 on the ground. It's pretty good. Drama-free.
Yeah.
Is KC clearly the best team in the NFL?
Oh, yeah. And the gap between them and the second best team in their sport is greater than in any major American sport that I can think of.
What a take.
And I mean, it's just, listen, they have, what is the single most important thing you can have in the NFL? I would argue a great quarterback. What team has the undeniable best quarterback, even if he doesn't have the best numbers this year? The Chiefs. Okay, what's the second most important thing you could have? I would argue an undeniable great head coach. Who has the clear-cut best head coach in the NFL? It's the Kansas City Chiefs. What's the third best thing you can have in the NFL? A great defense. And this is the part Patrick is right about that people might slowly understand. The Chiefs don't have a good defense. They don't have a very good defense. The Kansas City Chiefs have the best defense in the NFL. So nobody has a big game on them. Nobody. Do you know the last time the Chiefs allowed 28 points in a game? The Super Bowl against the Eagles. Not the most recent Super Bowl, the one before. What's that streak look like compared to the rest of the NFL? Well, I don't know. It's a lot longer than everybody else's. So how do they do it? Well, do your top running backs do well against this Chiefs defense? Let's see. They've played 5 of the best. No, they've all actually been terrible. I mean, Derrick Henry wasn't terrible, but was the worst game of the year. 2.5 yards per carry for Kamara. Dobbins, who was on, I think, a Bud List MVP. Bijan's Derrick Henry. Okay, so you don't let the running backs get off. What about the top receivers? How do they do? Let's see. Oh, wait, no one does anything. So what does that mean? Well, your running backs can't run. Your receivers can't do anything. So do you score points against the Chiefs? As it turns out, no, you don't. The Ravens average 32 when they're playing everyone else, 20 against the Chiefs. Bengals 29-25. Everybody drops by, touchdown-ish. New Orleans dropped by 17 points. So that's why, Brew, the Chiefs have the NFL's most dominant defense. And the one concern is, but what about the weapons and the playmakers? Well, I watched Juju Smith-Schuster, who had 260 yards for the Patriots last year, have half that last night. I watched Kareem Hunt, who played for the Browns for 5 years and had 100-yard game, have that last night, which is why the weapons, just turn your cast-offs into stars, because it's what they do. So, yeah, they are clearly, and by a massive margin, the best team in football.
I'm holding out hope that within a few months, the Baltimore Ravens will be the best team in football. But right now, I will say, right now, the Chiefs are the best team in football.
Yes.
It's hard to see them losing in the regular season. Now, you obviously thought they go undefeated last year.
Yeah, this year I said 14-3.
Yeah, it's just like, and they have had a tough schedule. They beat the Ravens, the Bengals, the Saints.
Well, the Bengals.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
But
the Saints, the Falcons, and
the Chargers.
The Chargers.
You could argue the two hardest schedules so far this year are the 2 undefeated teams.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You really could argue.
And I do think that the Vikings have played better. The Vikings have played better.
Sure.
But you do have to take history. Obviously, you're going to trust Mahomes more than Sam Darnold. Yeah. You're going to trust Andy Reid. As good as Kevin O'Connell is, you're going to trust Andy Reid more. So I agree with Nick that they're winning with defense. Nothing against Mahomes, and he's being Mahomes and winning games, but they are winning with defense. And while the numbers don't show total yards allowed, they're 9th. Red zone efficiency for the opponent, they're 10th. Pass yards allowed, they're 21st, and points allowed, they're tied for 5th with Chicago and the Jets. But they do have the best defense right now. They do have the best defense in the league. And so if Mahomes does get it going, and he's still, even though he hasn't been Mahomes, he did. Juju looked great last night.
I thought last night
like
Mahomes was extraordinary. Yeah. I know.
I think we'll get in there.
Yeah. But go ahead.
But yeah, so right now they're the best team.
So you flirted with it.
But I do think the Vikings are playing the best football.
Could you see 17-0? Because when I was watching it last night, I'm like, I don't think this team is going to be beat. And I know it's a little bit of like boiling frog, right? Put a frog in boiling water, it will jump out. But if you put the frog in the water and just turn it up 1 degree, it will.
Yeah, I think that's apocryphal, but that's what everybody says. Yeah, but go ahead.
I hope so.
Okay,
I don't
yeah,
want
go
any
ahead.
frogs to lose their life. But that being said, I also don't think the Chiefs are going 17-0.
But you can't pick a loss.
I don't know where the loss is.
So that's this, but that to me is wild, a symptom of when the NBA Finals come around. If it's Celtics, whoever, Nuggets, just say that's what it is.
You know, it always seems 4-0. I know.
Right, and you
gotta
pick Nuggets in 6. But before each game, you're probably going to pick the Nuggets to win, even though you think they're going to lose twice. So I mean, I'll tell you what I think the 3 losses are. I think they will lose to Buffalo because they always lose to Buffalo, and it's just the cruelest way to do the Bills.
Sure.
Every year, you lose them in the regular season, beat them in the playoffs. I think they will lose 1 divisional game, probably to the Broncos.
I agree with that.
And I think they'll lose a dumb one. Like the Browns for no reason. Like
One
Jameis is
unlucky
playing for the Browns or something. Like that's it, so that's how I get to 14-3.
Jeez.
But I don't think I just said I think the Bills will beat them. I guarantee when that game comes along and we're doing the show on Friday, I will not be picking the Bills, but so that's how I think it is. But they got through, Brew, the toughest part of their schedule.
They look good. All right, we got to do your MVP, Brew. Mahomes still in number 1. Lamar and Josh tied at 2, even though Josh had back-to-back brutal games. Stroud at 4, and Jaden at 5.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. All right, so does Mahomes deserve, Brew, in your mind, to be the MVP favorite?
You can keep him there right now, and obviously the 5-0 record is helping. But, Nick, a couple more games of pretty good, but not Mahomesian, and I think you're going to have to move him out of first place. Because, we're 5 games in now, and he hasn't been great. And so I can keep him there now, but I think he's going to have to pick it up to get to work. So I got my ballot right now.
Ballot.
This is as it is right now. This is not a projection. All right?
I like that he blinks.
At number 5, Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
All right, look, he's leading the league in rushing. He's leading 6 yards a carry. He's leading the league in big rushes over 20 yards or more, and he's leading the league with 6 touchdowns. Number 4, Baker Mayfield. Now he dropped the tad, but Baker's still playing well. Yeah. 3rd highest passer rating, tied with Sam Darnold for 2nd in touchdowns with 11, and only has 2 picks. Yep. And 3 really good wins: Philadelphia, Washington, Detroit. Number 3, Lamar. Lamar.
I mean, 2 Ravens.
Lamar, the last 3 games, Dallas, Buffalo, and Cincinnati, he's had a 128 passer rating. He's got 11 touchdowns total and 1 interceptions, 9 passing, 2 rushing. He's been great. Best, maybe the play of the game a year in his last game. Sam Darnold at number 2.
Fair.
Undefeated. He had a bad game, and he is definitely on pumpkin watch. Yeah. In fact, this might be the last week that he's this high or even on the ballot at all. But Nick, right now they're undefeated. He's got 11 touchdowns. He's top 5, 6 in passer rating.
I thought 2 guys were left.
Number 1, the rookie.
Oh, so you don't have CJ on there.
Right, no, not CJ. Look, they're 4-1. He's playing solid. Yeah, but Jaden's got 8 touchdowns, 4 rushing, 4 passing.
You swing the pendulum too far on Baker, and I love Baker.
Yeah, all right.
You think he should be lower?
Can I respond real quick? Because we have, I don't know if you can tell, we still have some bitters.
I want to hear.
All right, so I understand everything you just said. My counterpoint is Patrick Mahomes is the league's MVP.
Probably.
And when Juju Smith-Schuster has 130 yards, when you've lost your running back, your top receivers, and when he reminds you, Dust, can we show the scramble? He also, his numbers don't show it because he sadly has to kneel down 3 times every game, but he is the most effective running quarterback that isn't considered a running quarterback. And so, listen.
But Nick, 6 interceptions, 6 touchdowns.
No, I get it.
Stats have to come into play.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just telling you he's going to be the MVP. So whether he is or not, he's still the MVP. And while we're over here, I do have one more banner to drop, which is, okay, so that's me in the American City. And it says we're planning for the next 2 parades. for the Chiefs and the Royals, despite what Jazz Chisholm says. Play the sound, please. Just got lucky. Ramsey the board.
What? No.
The board.
A Royals board?
Ramsey. No, it's the Chiefs board,
He
but
wasn't
the
talking-
Jazz is going on the Chiefs board. Jazz. Royals got lucky. You know why? Guess who owns part of the Royals? Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to take that too kindly.
Oh, that's interesting, actually.
Yeah,
You tied
Patrick
it
Mahomes
together.
actually is an owner of the team.
Okay.
He owns the Raiders, the Broncos, and the Royals.
Right.
There it is. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.